Hello. Hi, everyone. Oh, the music stopped. Did y'all love the music? I feel like it was some kind of Twitter Elon Musk hypnotic thing. Just kind of waiting on a couple minutes, let some other people arrive. Good to see some friendly faces. Metafusion, I'm going to send you an invite to speak. I'll get you on stage to chat later. Madi is here. Is that Jordan? Yeah, Jordan. Atari, Space Time. It's a good gang. Just going to give, if you guys remember last week, Ryan had some. Oh, and Masha, just mute your channel if you could, or mute your mic. Just going to give a couple minutes. Ryan had some trouble connecting last week. See if he gets on this week. How's everyone doing? Let's see, we'll do thumbs up. Yeah, so hopefully Ryan's able to jump in. Just kind of kick things off by welcoming everybody. This is our second, Metafusion. I'm going to invite you just so you're up on the stage. And actually, I think I'm inviting Arcadia too, maybe. Yeah, this is our second space in our series for Emergence, especially as we head up to the launch of the Emergence Marketplace and towards the end of the summer. So last week I had a great space with John Radoff, talked about gaming infrastructure, which was actually really cool. Really think about the stack that goes into building worlds and experiences and how it gets all put together. Today we're going to take it a little more into the universe of gamers and talk about I actually want to talk a little bit about memories of games as part of our discussion with our friends at Arcadia, and talk about how games have inspired us a little bit. Games as social, ways to meet people. What are some of our favorite memories? How did you get into gaming? And we've got a bunch of announcements today, which I'm super excited about. We'll have an announcement with Arcadia. And I just actually kind of want to kick things off with a little bit of a kind of drop, which is that if you guys would share this space, so just click the little up arrow on the top, and you can share via post. And if you guys share, I'll find kind of 3 people who have shared and drop you guys some EMC, which is our emergence coins, which we're using for bounties and we're using for rewards. So if you guys would share the space, I just think it would be fun to kind of drop you guys some EMC. And that's a big part of the topic tonight, is rewarding. How do we reward communities? How are people gamifying the experiences of Web3? How do we collaborate with each other? How do we do that in a way that, brings new people maybe into the space? For us at Emergence, we're spending a lot of time thinking about how to bring players, collectors, developers, and creators together. And over the last month or so, I've met with, dozens of projects, some folks who are just coming into game development for the first time and just kind of experimenting. We've met with avatar creators. We've met with our partners at Futureverse and Lemon One. And I think we're all kind of aligned to the same idea, which is that traditionally in gaming, there's a studio, like I'll point my finger at Rockstar for a minute. They build Grand Theft Auto over the course of, let's say, a decade, and they do it behind closed doors, and fans kind of wait and wait and wait, and then maybe they drop a teaser video a year before they launch. But the fans are excluded, like the players are excluded from the process. They're excluded from what happens creatively. But with Web3, we can all be part of that experience. And that's what Emergence is trying to build the tools for developers, and then build the infrastructure for players and creators to come together. So that's what I want to kind of dive into a little bit today, is what is Web3 gaming? What is world building? How do we build communities together? And a big part of that is experimenting with each other, figuring out what works. How do we build reward systems that isn't just about farming, but it's about introducing people to our communities, making them feel like they can participate, making them feel like there's a path. And that's a big part of how Emergence has been built, and the role of Open Meta, which is the DAO kind of behind the scenes, for which Emergence is the key utility. So first of all, a big shout out to a lot of familiar faces in the audience, and a big welcome to our friends at Arcadia. First, though, I kind of want to, I don't know if there's any pork jet holders in the house. Put up your hands if you're a pork jet holder. You may have seen there was a bunch of tweets today. We're collaborating with PorkJet, and we'll put a tweet at the top of the space. So PorkJet, I actually just met them maybe a couple weeks ago, and I love the story of how PorkJet came to be. It almost happened as a meme in the Futureverse community. Um, and it gave them this idea to create these flyable pigs. So it's a pig that you can like get on with your avatar. Think of it like a hoverboard, but it's a pig. And they launched a collection, which did really, really well. There's still some of the collection available. I'm not sure how many slots, but one of the things we loved about PorkJet's attitude and how they're working is that they're cross collaborating with all kinds of communities, and we've joined that effort. You could see this at the top of the space. There's a bunch of groups that have come together, and kind of give a shout out to Root Name Service and Good PorkJet, and then we've joined that as well. So if you are a PorkJet holder, we will be dropping 25 EMC on 25 random holders as part of this Pay It Forward campaign. And 25 EMC is actually pretty significant for us. So it's a big drop, and it's an expression, I think, of our commitment to projects like PorkJet, because it's just fun, it's got a really great community, and it's got a really exciting roadmap. So happy to be working with those guys as one of our collaborators, and we'll have more to say about PorkJet in the future. And I'm just going to pull up Ryan to speak. Arcadia is also part of the PorkJet Pay It Forward campaign, and we'll be talking to Arcadia in a couple minutes. So I'm super excited about that. So make sure if you don't own a PorkJet, check out their project, consider minting one. It's also kind of a great way if you're not involved in Futureverse. It's another entry point into the Futureverse ecosystem, and all of the different projects that are being built on the Root network, which the Emergence SDK supports. So I don't know if we're going to be able to get Ryan up here. He was having some tech issues last week. I'll kind of keep an eye on my chats and see if he says anything. Did we lose him again? And if I can get the Arcadia guys up also. I've sent you guys an invite. You should see a little notice, and then you could come up on stage. Let's see if we can get you here. So I guess in lieu of Ryan joining us, I could give everybody a bit of a project update. For anybody who's new here, just a little background on who we are again. So Emergence is a hub for game developers, players, and creators. We launched an SDK for game developers for both Unity and Unreal. Those SDKs have been downloaded about 55,000 times. We've seen lots of projects that are now starting to percolate out of that. Oh, there's Ryan. Hey, Ryan. Hope your tech issues are a little better.
Yeah,
how's it going?
Sorry about being late.
That's okay. I was just talking about PorkJet and the little collaboration we're doing with them, and I was talking about how communities work together and how we're all trying to solve the issues of how to bring people into Web3 and make them feel engaged. And some of these like drops and rewards, I think, provide incentives to doing that. But Ryan, you and I have talked a lot about, what are some of the levers, what are some of the dials you can turn on building a community? And I think it would be interesting. I was just starting to give an overview of, Emergence and Open Meta. It would be good to just kind of hear your perspective on what you think the success factors will be for us as we build out Emergence and Open Meta.
Yeah, look, I'll probably not do the same intro every time, but I also want to touch upon for new people that are here. I'm the founder. Started this in 2018 as a company, Crucible, and then moved through the years to 2021, where we actually kind of formed our community into what would become a DAO. So that's what Open Meta is. And then since that point, since 2021, we've been really focused on building a brand and a product through Emergence. And that was in its first form this SDK meant for game developers, and we're now expanding that into more broadly like a system of innovation and interoperability for these game developers. So it will exist on the web, and I think what's unique about us is that the community is being given quite a lot, or we're designing the rails for the community to be given a lot more than just, an audience of customers or an audience of spectators. This is really meant to um, define an arc in which our community and our people around the world, as it grows, can have a hand in what this becomes, and not just from the technological perspective, but also from funding and who gets funding, how projects come together to get that funding, what it actually means when game developers utilize this kind of innovation and what's possible. Um, so as we continue to grow our community, we've talked about this before, but I think the consistency is really key. I think consistency and making sure that we're present, and that we're continuing to find the people that belong here week after week. I think breaking that consistency always has the byproduct of things taking longer than they should, or they would if there was that consistency. So I think that's one of the main things that we're prioritizing now, and then um, also just the quality of content. And we talk a lot actually between ourselves on the team about this concept of tangibility, and how uh, thus far there's been sort of a lack of tangibility in this industry quite a lot. There's been big waves of bull markets, and there's been financial tangibility in that sense, speculatively, but like what we're actually building beyond the speculation, there's been very, very little of it. And that's where we see, you know, uh, our our next steps being really, really focused on, is that tangibility, is building a product that works, is being one of the companies that sort of puts things in people's hands and lets them use them, and then also ties that in overall to the purpose of utility in the token, and what's even possible. I think one of the dilemmas that we have is that we build for game developers, and yet even today in 2024, the uptake on the innovation that game developers are willing to really experiment with is quite slow. Um, and so we've had some false starts here and there, and that's really that's the state of the industry and of the world at large right now. But every month and every quarter and every year forward, that will change, and there will be a tipping point at some juncture, either this year or next year. So I think I like to I come from the startup world, so I can understand like the lean startup method, and the more standard method of creating a startup or creating a product led startup, and how there are quick cycles on that. But this is much different. The nature of this is much, much different, and being early is just as sometimes detrimental as being completely wrong. So it's been this process of timing things out as best as we can, focusing on really like what we have under our control, which is not everything, but making sure that we're continuing to prioritize the things that we feel matter most, even in the face of a market that sometimes screams that other things are more important. And that's kind of just who we are, to our DNA, and that's what we'll continue to do. So I think now that we're in this space of consistent, not explosive growth, we're not buying fake followers or any of that stuff, just consistent growth with the right people, with the right signal. Um, that's what we're committed to. And in a number of months, we'll have an MVP of the product out to market, and then people can start to help us with their feedback to iterate that forward.
I had a couple questions on Discord that I think are really worth touching on. One of them was a question about, whether we plan on creating any UGC tools, so that people who can't develop in Unreal or Unity, can start, can somehow engage with Emergence. I guess I'd frame that up in a couple of ways. I find it interesting that there's people coming into our Discord. They're downloading game engines for the very first time. I know how scary that's how scary that is because I've fiddled around with Unreal quite a bit uh, back in the day when it was even harder to use. Um, and then we have other people who are creating little, mock-up games in WebGL. They're content creators, so maybe they're playing around right now with new music tools from Futureverse, and to me, they're creating something. So I think it's all kind of worthwhile to talk a little bit about, if you're not a developer, what do you see as pathways for people into emergence? Like, what are the kind of ways that you can get involved in what the community is doing if you're not a developer?
Um, yeah, I think the builders are the lighthouse right now, I think, and the builders are the ones that attract more people, right? I think like there's been almost a cart before the horse or cat and mouse kind of thing of like who do we build for first? Like, is it the larger world that's interested in this, or is it the skill set of people that you know that build the thing that attracts everyone else? And I think for us, you know, we have chosen a path to focus on the builders first, and then there is a halo effect around those builders, which are, I guess you could say, enthusiasts or fans of, or people with a shared vision who don't necessarily have the skill set of game development. Um, I always think it's important to remember like game development is a skill. It's a stacked skill. There's a barrier to using an SDK for a game developer if you haven't learned these engines. Um, and that is probably the barrier to that rapid experimentation that I referred to us seeing in AI, because AI created this interface that was just a prompt. It's a very easy language to just sort of manifest what you wanted. But we have to remember that like game engines are quite complex and they're complicated, and the skill set of game development isn't something that you just snap your fingers and you can do. So it also takes quite a long time. I think the even to get to a vertical slice sometimes can be the better part of a year. So we're just dealing with a form of media in which the production cycles are longer, and the skill set is it's an expertise, and it's a kind of combination of art and science. So um, I like to say that to acknowledge that, because I think sometimes in Web3 there's a lot of people who just kind of raise a bunch of money and think they can do that. And I'm sure there's some people that can learn it at that point, but it's a skill that needs to be learned. And it's one that I think deserves to be respected as well. Um, so if you're into that, then I highly suggest like there's tons of free resources to learn Unreal Engine or Unity, especially Unreal Engine. But think of it like you're studying, and it's going to take time for you to kind of build that skill set. If that's not you, if you're not interested in that, and you are just in a different industry, you like storytelling, you are even interested more in like the governance side of this and how things are being reinvented there. The way we've designed this DAO is in different houses, and different houses are different interests of, a rabbit hole to go down with all the people that are in that space. And we want to, by next year, establish this thing in the world that people can kind of not only find, um, like-minded people there, but actually like really dive in deep and start to collaborate, and co-create things together. So no matter where you come from with this, any point of view, like there's a place for you. It's just that as a company with our product line, where we're really focused on the builders and developers first.
I guess I'd give a shout out to the work that Pending Reality is doing with Bunshin. I suggest, like, if you guys are interested in um, something kind of in the middle, because he's developing with Emergence some pretty cool experiences, and he has some kind of semi UGC, like you can log in there and you can kind of build your own space. it's a great early example, I think, of that future is coming, that there will be platforms out there that will let you build on top of them and create experiences, and because it's part of Web3, I think it'll be interesting to see how that stuff evolves. I think the other thing I'd say, Ryan, is that there's a lot of work happening now that's kind of web side. I'm a big fan of Hyperfy at hyperfy.io. It's basically like little web-based, think of it like AltSpace VR or something like that. It's like little islands, like little spaces. You could build a disco, or you could build, I don't know, a park. Um, and you don't necessarily need to, be a big game engine expert to do that. Like, it's a bit simpler because they take care of some of the multiplayer stuff. Just kind of, it's a fun place to experiment. For us, it's a great example because when we launch the Emergence marketplace, it's going to have something called playgrounds. So if you're interested, like I used to, Marty's in the house and he'll remember, I actually used to sell houses. It was kind of how I got into the metaverse. It was something I did at night. I got fascinated with um, creating architecture. So I would create these houses, and I was actually selling like 500 houses a month. But I didn't know anything about the programming side of it. I just liked the building part. And so that's another way to kind of get into this, is like maybe you're interested in modeling. You're, look at PorkJet. They model these super cool pigs, super professional level, but everybody starts somewhere. And maybe you want to learn about what is a playground, and build one of these environments, and you'd be able to sell it on the Emergence marketplace, and then pull it into different environments like Hyperfy, which is pretty simple to use compared to learning Unreal. So I think, if you're interested in this stuff, be active on our Discord. We're trying to help people find, pathways into building. Our biggest focus, as Ryan is saying, is Unity and Unreal, but the ecosystem that we're building is starting to get a bit broader, which I think is super exciting. So we'll have, if you want to create an avatar, or you're into creating fashion, or creating a house, you can build all of those things. And Emergence is starting to create a home for different types of creators. So you don't need to feel like, you need a degree in need a degree in working on game engines to participate. So we're here for all of you. So I want to see, I'm trying to invite our Arcadia friends to the stage. If you guys want to drop me a message if you're having trouble. Otherwise, I'm going to send you an invite again, because I'd like you to get up here to speak. And while we're waiting, the other question that came up in the Discord, Ryan, was just to kind of explain our relationship to Futureverse and Lamina One. Put up your hand if you're a Futureverse fan in the audience. Yeah, we got some hearts. And I know we have lots of Lamina One folks, and lots of announcements actually coming up for our partnership with Lamina One soon as well. So Ryan, do you want to give like just kind of a top level? Because the question on Discord was, you said that our partners are Futureverse and Lamina One, and they just asked for me to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. We have a growing partnership ecosystem that we have been pretty selective in curating with around kind of, well, one, our relationships, the ones that are existing and the people that we like and we want to work with, but also this more kind of broad true north of storytelling that we have. And I think, over the next like several months into next year, what will become more clear is that we're a company and a product that's trying to do our best to kind of broaden the canvas of storytelling with all of this, which I think is something that's thinner in the Web3 space. But the two companies that Doug mentioned are our partners, and the ones that I think are doing that kind of in the most exciting ways. So Futureverse is actually not only our partner, but an investor of ours as well. We're fully integrated on technology, and they have the rights to the Ready Player One franchise. directly with Ernest Cline, the author. So that's, an interesting world or set of worlds to kind of play around in. We also have a partnership with Lamina One, who the principal behind that is Neil Stevenson, who's, probably top three, top two most important science fiction writers, is actually responsible for the term metaverse, coining that, creating it, popularizing it, in a book called Snow Crash. So between Ernest Cline and Neil Stevenson, we're collaborating pretty deeply with people who in our culture really have been a part of carving out the science fiction, but now are creating companies in order to sort of bend that science fiction, that dystopian science fiction, into a world that we want to live in, a reality that we would rather prefer. And then we have other partnerships with Pixelinks, who is it's a company I helped start with a friend of mine, Indir, and then now it's owned by Animoca. And they have a partnership to license the Black Mirror brand, so we can kind of play around in that world. So we're reaching into the storytelling aspect of it. I personally believe, and I know Doug does as well, like character arcs. These are the most compelling things, and story is powerful. Story is, we talk about gaming being the sort of path to mainstream, but really what we're saying is story. And every time people get excited about partnerships or adaptations into film and television, like that's essentially what we're saying. And so that's the one bucket that we can kind of really bet on, and we're excited to do that. So our partnerships reflect, that for ourselves.
Amazing. Just to let everybody know, our Arcadia is having a couple tech issues, just kind of joining us on stage. So I'm going to sort of flip a couple things around here, and maybe open this up as well to the floor, and to any other questions that you guys have. But I'll also start just a couple of sort of announcements. We're going to post at the top of the space. We recently held a series of quests on Zealy, and today we're announcing the winners. Part of that sprint on Zealy was we were going to give away a PlayStation or Xbox, so the winner's choice. And I think the winner is in our audience today, which is Yuri S. Was the winner of our PlayStation or Xbox. So first of all, big congratulations, and we'll chat, and you can choose your platform of choice. But congratulations. And then we have 9 other winners that we're posting. We'll post it up on Twitter and post it to the top of this space. And those winners will get Steam gift cards. As much as there's parts of Steam that I don't like, I have to admit I've got a pretty deep library on Steam. So I hope you guys spend your Steam bucks wisely. And that circles back, I think, to this question of kind of incentives and gamification of Web3. And I guess there's a couple ways to look at this, Ryan. It's kind of interesting to chat about it a little bit. One of them is that there's lots of farmers out there, a lot of projects, I think especially on the token side. And I saw a great article yesterday that was just talking about incentives and the difference between incentives within Web3 gaming and token incentives. And a lot of the token incentives, there's tons of farming going on. People are, completing bounties, and they're staking stuff, and they're, I don't know, whatever, all the stuff that they're doing just in order to kind of get free money. And some of it works clearly. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. But I think this author just kind of made the point that within Web3 gaming, some of these incentive structures are different, and they're used as a way to kind of onboard people into a game itself. And I think there's just this kind of couple of interesting thoughts I had. I guess the first is that, I love playing games, and the incentive structures within games, if it's overdone, I don't like it. But if it's done really, really well, I absolutely love it. So things like quests, things like getting that rare weapon drop, all of these things that we've learned from like playing great games have started to kind of extend into community building. And I like this idea that the experience of a piece of IP doesn't need to kind of stop at the doors of that IP, and that you can extend that experience into community, into fan contributions, into fan art, into activating people on social networks. How, I mean, just kind of top level thoughts, Ryan, on um, how do you create a community where people are actually engaged and they're there for the right reasons? How do you design those incentive structures, and then how do you extend that later as as mechanics within the DAO that is open meta? If Ryan is still there. And I'd love to actually, if anybody in the audience wants to kind of jump in, please do. While we wait for Arcadia to see if they can sort out their tech issues. And the second part of this question would be, and this was going to be sort of my lead off questions to Arcadia, because Arcadia is really kind of in the business of building games. Would love to hear, some of like what were some of the games that kind of brought you into Web3 or brought you into gaming? What are some of, just share a little bit about what gaming has meant to you. For me, my very, very first game was SimCity. It was played on an old black and white monitor computer. I think it was probably the very, very first version of SimCity. I had to play it at the office because I didn't have a computer at home, but there were 4 or 5 people that played SimCity City at the office, and we would stay after hours. Let's bring the Levens up. We'd play after hours, and at the time, you could actually print out your city on a dot matrix computer. So one of the guys that I worked with, he built this like really epic city, printed it out on a dot matrix computer, and it covered like probably an 8 foot by 6 foot thing of his wall. But there was something about that game, like the mechanics of the game. It kind of made you think. It gave you these little rewards. Um, Later, I had the pleasure of actually presenting at a conference with Will Wright, who designed SimCity and The Sims, and heard him speak about complexity theory, systems design, and his view that the world actually is just a bunch of systems that are put together, and the job of a game is to help us kind of understand the systems that underpin the world. So he was like a super deep thinker, but that was like my first big introduction to gaming. I'd love to hear how other people came into this world. And we have B Believins. Hello, sir.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, long time no see. Yeah, regarding games, just picking up on that question. My first NFTs was a fantasy game, so rare. So not so much of like an actual game, but more collecting cards and then using them, and in like they would be measured in points based on real life, like what they do in real games. And that was like actually my first NFT set ever that I bought in 2021. No, 2020 it was, yeah. So yeah, that was my entry to NFTs. And yeah, if you consider fantasy games, football fantasy, also as a game, then that was my game entry to Web3.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what are you looking out for now? Like, what's getting you excited? I know we've chatted a little bit, I think, on Discord. But what's sort of getting you excited these days?
I think like any game that is even fun, like a Web3 game, that is also fun if there like wasn't like incentives to play it. I mean, of course, it's an integral part of Web3. Also, Sorare had rewards, and for me, Sorare was always like this 50-50, like of having fun and getting rewards while playing. And I think like any game that is able to offer a gameplay where it's like enough fun to play it, and the rewards are like a bonus, or maybe it's 50/50 or whatever, then I think that like that's getting me excited overall, to see games where the gameplay is just like fun, and you come back and you enjoy playing.
Yeah, that's a novel. That shouldn't be a novel idea. Like, let's start making games that are just fun to play, and you're not just doing it to play to earn. I think we've kind of learned our lesson from the maybe the Axie Infinity days a little bit. Um, but mind you, I think there's a lot of Web 2 games that are designed like I'm kind of they have loot boxes and you're just farming, but you're farming in a Web 2 game and you don't even own anything at the end of it. Um, I talk a lot about kind of the World of Warcraft era. That was the era that first woke people up to this idea of the metaverse. I don't know, I guess it was called the metaverse then. Um, and there was a professor, his name was Edward Castronova. He wrote a book called Synthetic Worlds, and he really looked mostly at World of Warcraft and started to project that virtual economies could start to become the size of small countries. And recently, Jensen Huang said he thought that the GDP of the metaverse would exceed that of physical reality. And so it's this idea that, like, I agree with you that games need to be fun. But when I think back to my World of Warcraft days, I would spend hours and hours doing another dungeon run, doing another instance run in order to get my paladin mount or to get a particular piece of armor. And all of those assets are lost now. Like, I don't own them. That character's disappeared. I invested so much time and I don't have those assets. I can't even kind of show them off to friends. What do you think about ownership as even if it's not for like the financial upside? Do you think it matters?
Yeah, definitely. Like, and I'm not sure if Ryan, sometimes when you don't see someone is muted, I hope I'm not talking over him.
No,
No,
he's here.
okay,
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I mean, like ownership, like just as you say, I was more a heavy Guild Wars game player, so not so much on the World of Warcraft, but Guild Wars front, where it was also heavily about like building up your character, finding a profession, joining a guild. So it was, and the farming, as you also mentioned, and getting like the best armor and everything. So and just like you said for World of Warcraft, like I can't, these characters are gone. Like of course I could install Guild Wars 1 or Guild Wars 2 to get back and see them, but I can't take them anywhere. So I think ownership is like a mandatory if you want to create interoperability, because like how else, unless companies work together and establish a different standard of game interoperability, but I feel like that's like what blockchain is like perfect for, to have this ownership so that you can, anyone can see okay, like what's in the wallet, and then you can show it off, use it in a game, bring like the assets into other games. It's yeah, I feel like one of the best cases for blockchain to have like this ownership in games and beyond.
And listen, I'm gonna make sure that if anybody else wants to kind of jump in, feel free. This is pretty casual. I don't want to put two of our storytellers on the spot, but we've got Marty, who I've worked with for a long time now. And we've got Jordan, who is coming from the Film 3 side. And I would love to hear your guys' perspective on this question of kind of ownership and IP. We're talking about ownership within games. I'd be interested in hearing whether that's true of like entertainment in general. If you guys want to pop up, I'd love to hear your thoughts. There's Marty. Hello, Marty. Hello, sir.
I'm here, but basically, what I would love to do, since it hasn't come up yet, is have Jordan come up and
Jordan's here.
yeah,
Hello,
no,
Jordan.
no, and I would and talk about film three, and we're talking about all these elements to enhance, the entertainment value, the engagement equation, in the gaming world, or I feel like narrative gets mentioned, and it never really gets the kind of higher profile that I think it's worth giving. And I think that one of the things I know that I'm aspiring to play some kind of a role in is creating a way where the film three movement, marries this whole Web3 gaming side, because so many of the values are shared between both communities in terms of, the creator's role, the creator's opportunity for financial upside, the community's opportunity to co-create alongside and be engaged in the growth of the narrative piece, but not to the exclusion of the gaming piece, but as a complement to everything that gaming's about. So, but I think that Jordan could be much more on point, basically because this whole film three movement, she's the queen or the king, but who's basically birthed it, and really can be the person who's much more articulate about it than I am. But I still see her there as a listener, so I don't know.
No, she's on stage. Hi, Jordan. How are you?
Hey guys, I'm good. I'm good. It's good to be here. Thank you. Um, it's always great to hear Marty up on stage. So yeah, let me just do a quick introduction, and then we'll take it from there. I you know I think where we align very much is a lot because of what got me in crypto in the beginning in 2015, and I spoke at blockchain conferences by 2017, and I was working with Litecoin, and a lot of these ideas of self sovereignty were really really important to me. And so by the time that I started the squad in February 2021. It was really out of that. It was out of self sovereignty and the ethos of Web3. And what I felt like was going to be a revolution in film. And I'm a filmmaker. I started as an actor, became a writer, director. I had an Oscar contender, and I've been bouncing around this business with a lot of gatekeepers. And what I realized was that Web3 gave us that very thing that was necessary for creators, which is ownership of your own IP, and basically, the tenets of Film 3, which started as a movement and is now we've articulated into a legitimate business model, from financing to being driven by community to distribution. And, it started looking for like-minded people who wanted to figure out a way that we could take back the power from the gatekeepers. So I think that, I mean, look, we've done 700 spaces in 3.5 years. I have a podcast on it. Marty's on the podcast a couple of times. There's a lot of information out there about Film 3, but we're certainly very nascent in the same way. There are case studies out there for Film 3, which are amazing, that have been rolling out this past year. But we are not the size of gaming. But the important thing for me is this idea that, as creators, creator-led communities owning their own IP can be powerful. And we can, with our communities, finance our projects, and then we can have this built-in amplification because we are now co-creating with our communities, and there's an ownership aspect to some of them. If you want, it's unique to every project, but that's the part that excites me: empowering other creators within the ecosystem that I create. And then, of course, you have a built in audience, which is the people who helped finance, who helped create, co create, amplify. They're proud to be a part of it. And then there's the distribution side, which is the built in audience. So there are a lot of aspects that are still being built out. Bingeable, one of the distribution models, is rolling out some exciting stuff in the next couple of weeks. And I could literally, I could literally talk about this for hours, which is what I've done basically for the last 3.5 years of my life.
Well, look, we've chatted a lot, and I'd love people's opinions on this. I mean, especially there's a lot of people here coming from the Futureverse side, where one of the things they're doing is they're focusing on some pretty big IP. So it's taking things like Ready Player One, working with Ernest Cline, launching Open, working with Steven Spielberg and Warner Brothers, I suppose. But it's like they've got access to story, and something that we've talked a lot about, and I'd love people's opinions. Like, I think of The Witcher started as, I think it was a book, not a comic, right? It was a book, and then it became a game, great video game, one of my favorite, and then it became a Netflix series, and that follows this model of linear distribution, where a piece of IP gets handed off from one industry to another industry, trying to kind of take advantage of, you've got a bunch of players, maybe they're going to watch my Netflix show. I guess the most recent example of that was Fallout on Amazon. Um, and so there's this idea that stuff that we could be building in gaming already in Web 2 has a natural home in film and television. And so if communities are, so what do you think the opportunities are? There's some game devs in the audience. And I know that some of them are working on games, but they're also working, let's say, on a companion comic book. Shouldn't those
Yeah.
walls, like, how do we bring those walls down?
Yeah, well, that's the exciting thing here, right? And again, I want to just drive back to the fact that um, the difference to me is, as a creator, the exciting part to me is the co-creation, right? So look, I have not developed a game yet, and but I get super fired up at the possibility of being able to co-create with people far more talented and knowledgeable than myself. While I might, let's say, have an IP that or quite a few actually, that have been languishing on my hard drive, but it's the same as being a film director. My favorite thing is to choose a cinematographer, someone who I can share a vision with, and then they can articulate it based on their excellence. So, when it comes to developing a game, I think that this cross pollination, or I think you called it like a linear distribution of taking a piece of IP, makes complete sense. It's exactly what Star Wars is. And you mentioned Fallen, who has one of my dear friends, Walton Goggins, on it. And The Last of Us. I mean, all of these pieces of IP, um, the difference that I think that we can make is making sure that the majority of the revenue stream that comes from these IPs actually gets shared, comes back to the creator and comes back to the communities rather than to the gatekeepers, right? So I would think that would get uh, artists and other creators and devs super excited to build an ecosystem where we were really sharing the wealth, is the way I see it, Doug. And that to me is the differentiation between like Star Wars and that cinematic universe that was built out because they own the IP and they own the IP, right? And in this way, you can license your IP, you can share your IP. If you looked at my PFP right now, it's one of my favorite uh, communities because literally, if I wanted to go and write an entire story about a kid called Beast and my avatar, I could, and I would monetize that, and the majority of that monetization would come back to me. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I get a little bit fired up about this idea that we can expand these universes with our communities and that we can also create a world where our community members can monetize on that IP as well. So that's no idea if I answered your question.
You did. I
Just
mean, look, I mean, I think we talked at the top of this, and we're kind of coming up on the end. So I'll start to wrap things up. But we started off by talking about our collaboration with PorkJet. And, you know, I can actually see a project like that, you know, going down this path of exploring how do you take this nascent story like that's just community. Well, the thing I love about PorkJet is it really feels like it's so community driven that it just kind of evolved. Like it was almost spontaneous how that project actually got started. And I could see for sure like a little animated series about flying pigs. There's no question. And that the fact that fans are participating in that project and that it could become a game, it could become an animated series, it could become a comic book, it could become a comic podcast. That's what we're all in this to do, I think, is to just share in that act of creation and play and viewership. And just, I mean, let's have some fun. Yeah, sure, let's maybe earn something from it if we're contributing instead of it all being taken by the gatekeepers, as you say. But also let's you know have that feeling of ownership and that feeling of participation. I think that's what's super exciting. I'm disappointed today that Arcadia has had some real tech issues joining us. They can't. We keep sending them requests that they're not getting. This is another problem with like some of these big gatekeepers like X. They don't always. Some of the tech is isn't as good as what some of you guys in this room are building. So I'm really sorry that you guys can't join us. First of all, I want you to make sure that you follow Arcadia. They've got a mint coming up. As part of that, they've given us some free mints to Emergence, to the Emergence community. So, first of all, a big thanks on that. We will announce how you can participate in that giveaway on our Discord. So, please join our Discord for details. The process will include a little bit of activation on Twitter, being on our Discord, and then you'll have a chance to get a free Arcadia mint. But I really want to get them on the space. Maybe we'll look at next week if you guys are. I see a lot of hearts. I really want to talk to you guys because your vision. I just love your passion. I want to talk to you about the process that you're going through. How do you come up with your ideas, and how can we help? So I just want to kind of give a shout out to the Arcadia crew because I'm sure they actually sat there feeling super frustrated that they couldn't join us, and I feel sad too. I'm sorry about that. So those are three big, drops today. First was the PorkJet. Please make sure that you follow those guys. If you don't hold a PorkJet, please think about minting one. We're really super happy to be participating in their Pay It Forward program. Arcadia, we've got some free mints for you guys, courtesy of them, and that's thank you so much for that. So join our Discord and keep your ears open for how to participate and get in on the mint. And then we announced the winner of our Zealy sprints and the winner of the PlayStation and or Xbox. I'm a PlayStation guy myself. I'd take the PlayStation. So those were 3 big drops. July is going to be really crazy. We've got a couple of big announcements kind of on the tech side. I know that some of you are waiting on some news from some of our, on some of the work that we're doing with our partners. So please keep your ears open in July, especially if you're a developer. We'll have some stuff that we're going to start to announce with those big, tech partnerships. We've got a couple of really epic spaces planned for July as well. And we've got a little bit of a story to tell. And so I'm glad that we've talked a little bit today about story because we're going to start to roll out some of our own storytelling. And I'm excited about that. I've been spending a lot of time with concept artists, graphic designers, avatar creators. And so we've got some really amazing stuff lined up for our own storytelling in July as well. And we will also be launching a new version of our bounty system. I talked a bit about this at the front of the space today. We're going to be kind of enhancing how bounties work, and we're going to be focusing them on some of the social amplification stuff for sure, but a lot of it will be quests that are built for different types of interests. So if you're a game developer, for example, or you want to learn game development, we're going to set up quests to help you in that path and reward you with EMC. If you are a content creator, or you're a concept artist, or you're an avatar maker, we'll also set up quests for those different roles. And that's part of our way of balancing, the fact that we're giving out EMC and all of the rewards that come from that. We're balancing that with the types of quests that hopefully attract people to the community and, most importantly, open up pathways to collaborate with each other. And that's the part I think that's been super exciting, especially over the last month or so, to start to see these cross-pollinations of different projects, connecting up filmmakers maybe with developers, certainly connecting up different parts of our community with different projects has been rewarding to me personally to just start to see that happen. So July in particular looks like an epic month ahead, and excited to be on this journey with all of you. So I'll just kind of like open it up for any closing questions or comments just before we close the space. And thank you, Marty and Jordan, I put you on the spot a little bit, so thank you for jumping on stage, and thanks, Believins, for participating also. All right, so mark your calendars for next week at the same time. We've got a really interesting guest lined up. We'll announce that later in the week. And thanks, everybody, for being here. You're part of the family. Thank you.